Welcome into the latest episode of the Five on the Floor podcast here on the Five Reasons Sports Network. I am Ethan Skolnick. Before we get to today's episode, if you're looking to buy or sell a vehicle, AutoNation is where you want to go. They're the largest auto retailer from coast to coast, and their friendly and knowledgeable staff here in South Florida will help you save big on a huge selection of new cars, trucks, and SUVs, Toyota, Honda, Chevrolet, Mercedes-Benz, and much more. And if you're looking to buy pre-owned, shop AutoNation's huge selection of one-price pre-owned vehicles. They're all clearly marked with one price, their lowest price guaranteed. But here's the biggest thing, whether you want to lease, buy pre-owned, buy a new car, what you've got to do is send me a DM. Just slide into my DMs over at 5 Reasons Sports. That's the number 5 Reasons Sports. And say you want a new car, you want to lease a car, you want to do something over at AutoNation. You know what we're going to do? We're going to give your information to an AutoNation senior manager to walk you through the entire process. A couple people have done this with us already, and they've really enjoyed it, and they were able to get into a new car. So make sure that you do that. And, of course, you're going to mention 5 Reasons Sports when you do it. But send a DM to 5 Reasons Sports. I follow all of South Florida. It's not hard to send me a DM or just request access, and I will definitely chat with you there and get you to an AutoNation senior manager. And now, on to today's episode.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a Miami Heat and NBA podcast from Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, a.k.a. Alf954. Brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back here with you. And this is episode 5 of our 5-part series leading into training camp, leading into the Jimmy Butler press conference. And what we are going to cover today is the 5th issue for the Heat, which is rebounding. And this is the one place where the Heat probably did not get better this offseason. And so we're going to discuss that with Christian Hernandez, who was here with us for episode 4 about the Heat shooting, and also with my usual co-host, Alphonse Sidney. You can find Christian at I Can Be Your Hero or whatever. And you can find Alphonse Sidney at Alf954. And Christian was nice enough to send us a spreadsheet on this one as well. And there's one thing that comes across pretty clearly. As much as we mocked Hassan Whiteside, as much as we say we won't miss him for anything but talking to fish, we're going to miss him here. How much are they going to miss Hassan Whiteside, Christian?
I mean, the difference between, in terms of a rebounding team, at least, I mean, that is by far his trademark skill, let's say, is rebounding, because he might be the most elite rebounder in the NBA. When the Heat had Hassan Whiteside on the court last season, they were grabbing 50 rebounds per 100 possessions. To give you an idea, the team that had the most rebounds per 100 possessions through the whole season last season was the Milwaukee Bucks, that had 47.8. So the Heat were essentially, and you don't like, it's kind of frowned upon in the statistics community to kind of use samples like that and compare it to like an entire team, but it kind of goes to show of how good of a rebounding team the Heat were with Hassan on. To kind of show you the flip side, when he was off the court, the Heat only grabbed about 44 rebounds per 100, which is a drop of 6 rebounds per 100 possessions. That would have put the Heat about 23rd in the NBA. So it's a sizable difference.
I just want to say the stats community sounds really sad.
They're very proper, you know, and if you start using things in ways they're not meant to be used, they get upset. And honestly, I get it, as like one of the few people seemingly on Twitter that actually understands how the entire theory of statistics is supposed to work. Man, it can be tiresome at times.
Well, you sound really self-righteous there.
I took a class in college, and I was really proud about it.
It sounds like you really like yourself, which is cool.
Shut up. But yeah, Hassan Whiteside big on rebounds.
As the only stat nerd that has a girlfriend, Christian Hernandez. Anyway,
major upset, right?
All right, so losing Hassan, huge hit when it comes to rebounding. But they weren't necessarily a better defensive team when Hassan was on the floor, right? Or am I reading that wrong?
I'm going to look that up to be 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure from my vague memory of last season that was somewhat true, actually. You know, it's kind of like a give and take with Hassan, because, like, for example, last season was one of Hassan's most unleashed seasons when it came to his shot selection. What happened? He actually didn't have that great of a shooting season for a big. So, is he going to get a ton of putbacks and he's going to create value in that sense? Absolutely. But you do wonder, where, he costs you, in other aspects, so his general, sometimes his, I don't want to say laziness, but he's a slower guy. He's a big guy. So transition is not friendly to him. And there are times when he's not getting the ball offensively that it can affect other aspects of his game. I do hope that does not end up being an issue in Portland. I was looking at it earlier. I'm super fascinated by Portland going after Hassan because they were already a top 3 rebounding team in the league last season.
Right.
So
they lost their starting center.
They did, but I mean, is Nurkic
for half the
supposed to be
season?
gone? Yeah, he's not gone for the whole season.
I don't think they got Hassan for the whole season. I think they got Hassan to keep them above water until Nurkic gets back.
Which could be a potential disaster for them when Nurkic comes back and Hassan starts losing minutes. Like I don't think they've thought this totally through. This is a total diversion here, and I want to get back, or digression, or whatever it is. I want to get back to the topic of rebounding and defense, but I will ask you both this question. Hassan came out this week and said, Heat fans are paying attention to everything he says, and Hassan says things just sometimes for effect. Said this is the most talented team he's ever played on, this team in Portland. Do you guys agree with that? Because that 15-16 team, it never really came together as we hoped because of Bosch's situation. But I think that team was more talented, wasn't it? I mean, maybe Lillard was better than anybody on that Heat team. Maybe McCollum was too. But
yeah, I mean,
I think 3 through 7, you would probably pick the Heat guys, right?
I guess that's where the conversation's interesting. They definitely have the 2 best players, I think, because I think Lillard is a better player now than Dwayne was back at that time.
Yes, there's no question about that.
Right, and obviously considering that that they lose Bosch, I think CJ is definitely the next best player out of all those available players. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the depth that the Heat had, I mean, Luol Deng was huge for them. At that point, they had obviously already acquired Goran Dragic. They were very deep, and Dwayne was still kind of hanging on to the prime of his powers, and that's why they almost got to the conference finals.
Yeah, I mean, Dwayne was really good in those playoffs, at least for the at least in single games. Maybe not for the entire series, but he had some really big moments. You had Luol, you had I know Bosch went out, but he was on the team with Bosch, and that's where I guess the sticking point comes in. He did play at one point with a starting lineup of Goran Dragic, Dwayne Wade, Hassan Whiteside, which I thought was actually a better Hassan Whiteside than he is now, Luol Deng, and Chris Bosh. That's the most talented team he's ever played on.
Most talented, but it didn't work, right?
It didn't work, but it was actually starting to work when they got. By the time that All-Star break came,
they were 4 games over 500 at the break. I mean,
that team was playing better.
I know. I traveled. I covered 75 games that year. I know. But the team took off when they got less talented, which is the weird thing about it, right? Like when Bosch went out and Luol went to the 4, and they brought in Joe Johnson, they played better. Actually. And
then even if you talk about Joe Johnson that year, so the thing is, put it all to the side. Hassan said what he's supposed to say, right? Like you don't go to Portland and just say, "Oh, this team's pretty good," but man, we were much better in 2015-16 with the Heat.
Like, I just think we're sensitive because we know that Hassan's taking shots. I think what'll be interesting is when he calls Terry Stotts the best coach he's ever played for, which is coming. Which is coming, by the way. And then 3 weeks later, he'll be upset that he doesn't get the minutes he got. But let's get back to the rebounding here, because if you don't have Hassan, then obviously what's going to happen here, if Bam is going to play 30 to 35 minutes, is that Bam is going to have to be a better rebounder than he's been, or at least they're going to have to rebound better with Bam on the floor. I guess that would be the best way to put it. Mm-hmm. What do you see his value as a rebounder? How much better can he get there? And I guess the other question, I always ask you 3-part questions. Who does he need to play next to? Because they have 3 options, right? Like 3 or 4 options. They've got Olynyk, they've got Derek Jones Jr., they've got James Johnson, and they've got maybe at times Myers Leonard, and maybe even Justice Winslow as a small 4, right? So who would be best for him to play next to for this particular category, which is rebounding?
I mean, if we're talking about rebounding, I think you really have to look at Derek Jones Jr. He's a freak. Let's just like, when it comes to his ability, one, to leap, as we saw, I think that it was like the NBA Twitter account had him as the #1 dunk of last season, that crazy one-handed alley-oop that he finished from Bam. But he can obviously leap, but Derek also has a real sense for tracking balls off the rim. It's kind of, that's something that's very hard to teach. Like, you kind of just have to be able to pick up, when the ball is going to hit the rim and time your jump accordingly so you can maximize your chance of, grabbing a rebound. He has a real natural talent for that. And considering that his shot is definitely not there, he's definitely going to be finding ways to contribute like he did last season. One of the ways that he did was on the offensive glass. He was an absolute nightmare on the offensive glass. And I had a chance to, because I was obviously doing a little research because I like to prepare, Alf. And, I saw that when Whiteside and Derek Jones Jr. were on the court last season, it was not a huge sample, about 160 minutes or so. But the Heat would have been a equivalent of a top 7 rebounding team, with the amount that they rebounded with those two on the court. Those two guys give you enough size and athleticism where if, for example, one of the great things about Bam is his switchability and how he can go out and guard on the perimeter. If he's away from the basket, you need to have people behind him who are going to pick up the slack. And there's very few guys that aren't a center that are going to be better than Derek Jones Jr.
And I guess what I look at with this team, and of course this is not the Big Three Heat, but the Big Three Heat never had an elite rebounder. Even Chris Bosh, who was a double-digit rebounder before he came to Miami, actually regressed as a rebounder. But what they did, and I don't know, can the Heat do this? Can the Heat with Jimmy Butler, who's probably a plus rebounder at the small forward position, Justice Winslow, who's definitely a plus rebounder at the point guard position, can they do some of the things that LeBron James and Dwayne Wade did to kind of make up for the fact that, no, the Heat did not have that inside presence that was going to pull down 14, 15 rebounds a game?
I mean, absolutely. Do you know what's super fun? And I'm not sure if anybody's really put that out there for people to kind of like massage it, but the Heat, and again, these fun lineups, Spoelstra tends to avoid them, I find, but he could theoretically throw out Justice Winslow, Jimmy Butler, James Johnson, Derek Jones Jr., and Bam Adebayo at the same time. Good luck scoring on that. Have a good time.
Jesus. There's Justice is the smallest guy on that line in that lineup.
Right, exactly.
At
Think about that.
6'7".
I think he's really more like 6'5", 6'6", but still.
But listed.
Like a built 6'6" guy is your best shot at abusing somebody with size. A guy who the Heat were playing in the playoffs his rookie season at the power forward and center position.
Right.
Yeah, good luck taking him in the post. It's not a good idea.
So how much do those two things play together? Because I don't think we'll ever see that lineup, because I agree with you. I don't think Spo will go quite that diabolical. But, like, how do those two things play together? Because we agreed on the last podcast, we talked about shooting. We all agreed that this is not necessarily going to be a top 10 offensive team, but we think it could be a top 5 defensive team potentially. But if it's going to be a top 5 defensive team, they have to finish possessions, right? I mean, they got to get the ball off the rim. Like, if they don't get the ball off the rim, then obviously possessions, the other team gets more possessions or more opportunities. And then you also don't get out and run and get the easy ones that I think this team is going to need as they're finding themselves offensively. And they do have a bunch of guys who are good in transition. Derek Jones Jr., Bam Adebayo, Goran Dragic. Okay, I think Tyler Herro's got a chance to be good in transition. Jimmy's good in transition. I mean, they have 5 or 6 guys that can be good in transition. Are they going to be able to finish possessions? I think as an offensive rebounding team, they're going to be pretty good. But are they going to be able to finish the possession by boxing out and getting a rebound? Or does it even help them to play Kelly more with Bam, which has been a positive combination for them the past couple of years, gives them more size, but not necessarily the athleticism that they would get with Derek Jones Jr. or somebody else at that spot?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things that has really hurt the Heat in the last few seasons, especially compared when you really compare them to the Big Three teams, and obviously it's hard to really compare any teams to that team or to those set of teams, but one of the things that the Heat really don't do as well these days is turn the ball over, is force opponents to make live ball turnovers so that you can get into those advantageous transition opportunities. Why that's been of late, I'm not going to really speculate, but you would think now having the ability to have so many athletic, capable, long athletes on the court, that will lead to more opportunities. To me, I think how good this Heat team can be hinges on how much they can take advantage of transition. They have young guys, young athletic guys that are ready to run and ready to leap. And you have a guy in Jimmy Butler who has shown a historical knack for being very effective in transition. So I'm hoping that he will kind of take over the mantle that Dwayne left. And Dwayne, obviously, towards the end of his career, he was more content to kind of just, stomp on the ball and let things set up and run the offense, in a more half-court set. So I do hope that Jimmy still has that urge to run when he comes here. Obviously he's only 30? Like he's still very much in his prime. So I do hope
38 in Tibbs years. But I don't know that. But Christian, I do think he'll still be effective in that sense. I guess the biggest thing that I come to here is, will these guys want to run? Because Eric always talks about this. You see Eric on the sideline, with a windmill, right? Trying to get guys to run, and he always talks about it. Players say they want to run until they have a chance to run.
Mm-hmm.
And then they don't want to run anymore. Now, I would think these young guys would actually be into that. But you never know. And I don't know that Goran wants to push anymore. That was his big thing the first couple of years, and he's kind of indicated that he's okay playing in the half court now. But so it's going to have to be Justice a lot of times, I think, pushing the tempo there, but they got to get the ball off the rim. And I do think we're going to see the inversion again that we saw before. And, Alf hit on it, the LeBron-Dwayne inversion, right? It was LeBron and Dwayne who were their best defensive rebounders. And they were the guys who got the ball and they went. Okay, maybe they gave it to Rio sometimes and yelled at him, but they went. And, it wasn't necessarily Bosch. It wasn't Ilgauskas or McGlure or Dampier or Turiaf or any of the variety of stiffs that they had at the center position. It was LeBron and Dwayne going back and getting the ball, and that's going to have to be Jimmy and Justice, I think. And I think it has an opportunity to be that. We'll close this here in a second, but want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. That is Magic City Casino. You got to check out the High if you never watched Highlight. It's a great Miami-based sport, actually, and you can see it at one of the places that it's been at historically, and that's Magic City Casino. But the High is more than just Highlight, which you can bet on. It's also a nightclub. You can go there, get some drinks, get some food, watch the games, also watch the Highlight. They've got indoor lawn games. And it's right there in Miami, and you can get to just about anywhere you want to go. So go check it out for a couple hours, and then you can go to Wynwood, you can go to South Beach, you can go up to Las Olas, or any of the great places in South Florida. So check out the High at Magic City Casino. All right, last part of this, and I'll go to both of you guys on this. We've talked about defense, and defense goes with rebounding. The other place that they're going to miss Hassan, though, is as a shot blocker. Bam, I think we all agree, is a better all-around defender than Hassan and will become even more so over the next few years. But he doesn't give you that rim protection, and I don't know who else on this team does. If they're not going to be a great rebounding team, is it all going to be on the perimeter guys, Christian, to be able to keep players out of the lane? And we know with Goran, it's a little difficult for him these days. For Harrow, it might be a little bit difficult. You figure, Justice, Derek Jones Jr. became a better defender last year, and Jimmy, that they might be able to handle it. But how are they going to be able to sort of handle players at the rim unless Bam becomes an elite shot blocker like Hassan was?
Yeah, I mean, you do hope that your perimeter guys kind of hold. I mean, we're going to really see very early what kind of a vision the Heat have for this roster. Are they going to play Jimmy as a 3? Are they going to play him as a 2? Because honestly, I think if you can play him more as a 2, and you just kind of, I've been calling for this team to size up for a few years now, and Spoelstra for the most part has shied away from it. While I think there are reasons for that, you have Goran Dragic who you want to play up his value. You have James Johnson, James Johnson fits sizing up, so that's not. But you still, you end up making these lineup contortions because you're trying to play certain guys to show their value. I think that's a bigger reason why, you still got a lot of Hassan Whiteside last season, even though you saw what Bam was starting to become to be. What were we talking about?
We're talking about rim protection.
Rim protection, right? I mean, Bam. I'm sorry. That's I got sidetracked.
We've come to the end of our 5 parts.
I was looking this up. Hold on. No. Hold on. I want to get this out. Damn. God damn. Hold on. No,
all right, Team 5R exit. Let's go. Come on.
Hold on. I was.
Can we spill that here on the podcast?
Yeah,
that will be more interesting to me. I mean, if people don't know, Miami Heat Beat was under the 5 Reasons umbrella. We sort of parted ways amicably. Those guys went to Blue Wire Pods. I stole Alf and Alex Toledo. They still do some work for Heat Beat. Everything's cool. I had lunch with Johnny the other day. We actually split the bill. A lot of these guys, including Christian, I'm hoping, are going to be doing some writing and some other stuff for us over the course of the season. So everything is cool. But for some reason, Christian had a handle here. When you go to Zoom, when you're doing these podcasts, he had his handle, and it was Team 5R Exit. Now, I've noticed over the course of this podcast, you thought we wouldn't notice, it has been changed to Team 5R for life! !
Christian Boris Johnson.
Okay. Just to give my personal perspective, okay, and I guess I'm not really trying to say what Gianni or Brian were thinking, but the entire time in that process when we got the offer from Blue Wire, I told them I was 100% behind whatever they wanted to do. And at that point, I'm pretty sure they were already leaning towards it, so I was just being supportive. That is straight up hilarious. I guess, I've used Zoom probably like at least 5 or 10 times since then, but I never actually look at those little the little names. So I guess I just never noticed.
Yeah, as soon as I saw it, I took a snapshot of it and sent it to Alf. I texted him on a separate string. Yes.
In my defense, that was the call that I missed.
Yeah, it was the call that Nikias missed it too, but that's all right. Like I said, it's all one big happy family again. Now back to rib protection. I'm sorry, I had to share that with the audience.
Thank you for that diversion because I was actually able to find these numbers. Okay, to your point, Hassan was the highest ranked rim protector when it comes to the difference in terms of the field goal percentage that the player actually scores going against Hassan compared to what they're expected to do. Players shot 13% worse at the rim when Hassan was contesting than they normally would. That was the best in the NBA. So is Bam going to give you that kind of rim protection? Absolutely not. But the good thing is that Bam actually did make strides last season in his, and that's the other thing. The amount of attempts that he was protecting at the rim was much lower than Hassan, which kind of shows that he doesn't just lurk around the rim as much as Hassan does. He's a very different kind of defender. But even in the plays that he did defend around the rim, he was holding opponents to 6% below what they were expected to shoot. So he was still an effective rim protector. He's just not there with the same volume that Hassan.
Well, and that's what I think sometimes rim protection, and this is why defensive stats are misleading, right? Because shot blocking to me does not – yes, it implies rim protection, but that also means somebody got to the rim. And I think what you see with some of the numbers with Bam is the team plays a better defensive game when Bam is in the game. Not to say that they were a really good defense with Hassan, but Bam brings enough offensively to the table that it doesn't hurt as badly on the defensive end. And Bam is a really good defender, and now you have a step up in Jimmy on the perimeter. So, yeah, they don't have the elite rim protection. But you know who never had elite rim protection either? The Big Three Heat.
Yep.
So it's because when you have better.
Dwayne was the best shot blocker, right?
And when you
100%.
And when you have guys like Joel Anthony on that team who defended all over the court, sagging back like Hassan and protecting the rim wasn't as necessary. So I think some of those things are a little bit misleading. Rim protection is great, but no, it's better not letting anyone near the damn rim. And I think you're going to see a lot of that with this team. I don't think a lot of guys are blowing past Jimmy Justice or Derrick Jones Jr. or any of these guys in the perimeter. I think you're going to see a lot of mid-range jump shots against this team.
Man, I'm going to just real quick before we go. I'm really excited for Derrick Jones Jr. this season. I think he has the real opportunity to establish himself as an elite defender in this league, especially now that there will be national attention on the team. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, we haven't, it's funny, Alf. We've gone through all these episodes, and I feel like we've talked about him less than any of the other rotation players, and I'm not really sure why, except that I don't really know where to put him, right? Like
I think that's
Is that because we haven't talked about KZ Okpala too, because we haven't seen him, right? I mean, he couldn't really by the time that he was eligible to play in Summer League, he didn't play. I was out there in part in Vegas to watch him and didn't get a chance to. But I just think that Derrick Jones Jr. It's weird because we've had all these conversations about the backcourt, who's the 2 and who's the point guard and who plays the 4, which could be Derrick Jones Jr. in a lot of situations. But I'm with Christian here. Like, if you look at the progress, like when he came from Phoenix, he talked about wanting to defend, but a lot of guys talk about that and then get to the Heat system and don't buy in.
Right.
And he's bought in completely, and he has the tools to do it. So
Guys
I understand why they didn't want to give him up to Dallas. That's what all that was about, right? Like they didn't want to give him up, so they have plans for him.
And they consider him like a first-round pick. And
they've talked about it. Well,
and people make fun of that and they joke about that, but
no, they're right. No, if you redraft that draft, he'd probably go 15th. Like he's a mid first round pick, but I don't know where to put him. But I feel in some ways, and Christian, tell me if I'm wrong about this. I feel in some ways like we've had all this conversations about them talking about Justice Winslow as a Swiss Army knife, right? Like, and Justice doesn't want to be that. He wants to be a point guard. It's a little bit like Minkah Fitzpatrick, to be honest. Like Minkah Fitzpatrick. Swiss Army knife. Well, he really just wanted to play one spot, right? I feel like Derrick Jones Jr. becomes the Swiss Army knife this year. Like, if they're going to actually plant Justice in one position and let him go, then it's Derrick Jones Jr. who maybe, is guarding a 2, or Derrick Jones Jr. who's playing the 4 next to Bam, or maybe playing his natural position. I feel like he'll be all over the place.
I think you're going to see a ton of that. I think this whole team, you're going to see guys switching all day long just because they have that versatility. And just like, and I hope Spose plays some of those lineups that Christian was talking about, where you have 5 guys, 6, 7 and up out there, and all the guys who can all guard 5 positions, because that's going to be super exciting. And the thing with Derrick Jones Jr. is like you said, we don't know where to put him, but that's one of with this team, the question mark to me is how good is that bench, that second unit going to be? And with guys like Derrick Jones Jr. taking another step, James Johnson healthy, Dion Waiters healthy, Goran Dragic, like I think it could be such a potent second unit, and I think that's where Derrick Jones Jr. is gonna shine. I don't know if he's ever gonna start. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But whether starting or not, I think you guys are right. I think he has a huge opportunity this year, like you said, especially if Justice is taken out of that Swiss Army knife role.
So one thing that I guess is not really defense related, but I kind of wanted to just bring up real quick before we finish is I think the one thing that we're all in agreement that Jimmy Butler is going to fill holes that have been very much needed by this team, from isolation play to clutch play to really just having a go-to guy. Obviously now that Dwayne's gone, but how much do you think he's going to take the reins? Like, I think that's going to be one of the biggest questions to this season too. Is he going to be a 20 field goal attempt per night guy? Is he going to be that kind of volume, or is he going to be more like 15 field goal attempts a game, doing a lot of distribution, getting the younger guys and helping them grow? It's going to be fun to see which one that is.
I think he's going to be LeBron light in a lot of ways. I think that his makeup, there's some LeBron in there. I think that he doesn't have, quite the skill set that LeBron has in a lot of areas, but whereas LeBron might have been a 9.5 out of 10 in a lot of areas, Jimmy's an 8. And I feel like we're going to see a lot of that develop. I think he's going to take a lot of Dwayne's responsibilities in terms of setting guys up with lobs. I do think his usage rate will probably go up from where it's been historically. To me, the most encouraging thing about Jimmy has been what I've seen off the court so far. Him embracing the young guys. When I did the podcast with Bam, and he says Jimmy reached out to him on his birthday. They hadn't had a conversation before. The photos he's taking with Justice, working out with Tyler Herro. I think it's very telling the players that he's been associating with. Mm-hmm. It's a clear message to me, like, I'm going to take the reins with these guys for the future. You don't see him, and I know Dion has been with other people, but you don't see him so much with Dion or James Johnson or others. It's the core 3 that we're talking about, and I'm sure there'll be a relationship there with Derrick Jones Jr. too. And that's where I see this thing going. But to close the episode, since we have you here, maybe if Alex is still here, he wants to jump on, since he did a couple of the episodes with us as well. Alf and I have both kind of said, I think I've talked Alf into this, that I see this as a potential 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. I think they're between 3 and 5 depending on how things break. I think they could be in the high 40s. I think they're going to be a lot better than people think because, to me, when you give Spo an uncluttered roster with hungry guys who want to defend, that's the kind of roster he likes to coach. It's not what he's had the past couple seasons. He's got a lot of motivated players on the team for a lot of different reasons. I think they win between 46 and 48 games. That's where I have them. I think I've kind of talked Alf into it over a period of time. I'll go to Christian first. If Alex is on here too, he can hit this topic also. Just looking at them going into training camp, where are they? What do you see?
Obviously you don't want to be like too homery, but I think the Eastern Conference is still riddled with a lot of kind of middle of the road teams. I think there's two teams that to me are the most interesting coming into this new season, especially relative to where the Heat will be in the standings, and that's the Celtics and the Raptors. Because I think both of those teams could theoretically be better than the Heat, but I think there's also arguments where they could be worse than the Heat, especially I'm looking at Toronto, and you know how decisive and swift of a GM that Masai Ujiri is. And if things don't break right in the beginning of that season, I wouldn't be surprised if he considers just blowing it all up and starting over. So, maybe outside of keeping, SciComm. But yeah, and the Celtics, I don't think they got better. I think they got worse. I think they got a fair amount worse. And if Jason Tatum doesn't take a star leap, I just don't see it. I could see the Heat being a 4 seed, 3 or 4, honestly. It depends
Indiana, you don't know when Oladipo's getting back, and you don't know how effective he's going to be when he is.
I really love Malcolm Brogdon. I thought that was a great add to replace Bogdanovich, but without Oladipo, that team could miss the playoffs.
Who's going to score for that team? That's my thing. Like, Bogdanovich saved them on a lot of nights last year. I don't know how they score, and I look at
Jeremy Lamb, of course.
Yes, Jeremy Lamb. Thank you, Alex. Has heard.
He's the other guy they added. That's right.
Yeah, but it's I just don't know how they're going to score, and I still don't think their front court fits. So I don't see it. Alex, you've done a couple of these episodes with us. Where do you see them?
So I've been saying since the Jimmy acquisition that I think they're right in that tier of teams as Boston, Brooklyn, Indiana, Toronto, the ones you guys have been talking about. I think if things bear well, they could definitely finish out as a 3rd or 4th seed. But like Christian was saying, it's going to be tough to imagine Boston being that good when their front court rotation is like Enes Kanter and the rookie Grant Williams and Daniel Tice. I think their defense is going to get worse, which was their biggest strength last season. I think Brooklyn should be good even without KD. How good they are, it depends on Kyrie. But yeah, I think he could finish right there around 46 wins.
And Alf, we'll close here. So looking at the other teams we haven't mentioned, which of these teams do you think could actually get up and surprise? Because Indiana was not expected to do what they've done the past couple. I mean, when Oladipo showed up, Paul George left. Like, nobody thought they would be a top 4 seed. So I'll give you some teams: Detroit, Atlanta, Orlando. Any of those teams have a chance to get in the top 5? You think?
I could see if anybody would have to. Jesus, maybe Atlanta. I think they're another year away.
I like Orlando, honestly.
I don't like Orlando. I think all those guys got paid. They look like that 30-11 Heat team.
They were super healthy last year too, right? They had that ridiculous stat about their top 6 guys like hardly missed a game.
Yeah, I see them regressing.
2 straight years.
I don't know.
I don't believe in Detroit.
I'm not convinced Markelle Fultz is broken goods. But I
agree. I agree with you on that. I would have taken a flyer on him. I think there's a real opportunity, but I just look at their health last year. Everybody was healthy. Fournier was healthy. Vucevic was healthy. Gordon was healthy. That doesn't really happen. I look at it. I think Atlanta may make a huge jump. I think they're well coached, and I think Trae Young's a star. Like that.
What about Brooklyn? Where are we putting Brooklyn?
Is Durant going to play? Because there's rumors he's going to play.
That's the thing. You could make a real argument that Brooklyn got worse for the regular season next season.
Right. They just got to make it.
And it's now you're really counting on Kyrie to be the leader, and we already kind of saw that didn't really go great. So I don't know.
And is he going to play 70 games? I mean, that's the other thing. Is he going to play 70 games? They did lose LeVert for part of last season. They overcame that.
They lost. D'Angelo Russell was huge for them, and If Kyrie's a replacement, he's not going to play 82 games.
But that's the thing, right? So I'm not really sure. So I think all of us kind of have the Heat sort of in that 3 to 5 mix. All right, check out future episodes of 5 on the Floor. Obviously, check out our sponsors, Seltzer Mayberg Law Firm, Magic City Casino, BetDSI.com, and all the others. If you want to advertise with us, reach out to me at 5 Reasons Sports. Check out 5reasonsports.com. I think all 4 of us are actually going to be writing on there. And we will be at Media Day. We will be at training camp, and we're holding an event up in West Palm on Thursday the 3rd. So more information on that on 5 Reasons Sports. Thanks for joining us. And our next episode from the Jimmy Butler press conference. Talk soon.